The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are simply that, opinions. All are presumed innocent until proven otherwise in a court of law. Sensitive topics are discussed. Discretion is advised.
I'm Vinnie Politan. The subject of my investigation is Sean Diddy Combs, a man who's been in the public spotlight for years, but now is in trouble for what prosecutors say has been happening behind closed doors. Allegations and conduct that has some comparing it to Epstein-like behavior. Here's the story. At one time, he was the king of hip-hop, one of the early pioneers who took his music and culture and turned it into hundreds of millions of dollars, establishing himself as a true power broker in the world of entertainment. Sean Puffy P. Diddy Combs has gone by many names and nicknames, but now he has a new title, federal indictee. Diddy has been accused of engaging in sex trafficking and racketeering, charges that could keep him locked up for the rest of his life. The allegations are serious and include recording lewd acts, forced labor, kidnapping, arson, bribery, obstruction of justice, and other offenses. Prosecutors say he abused, threatened, and coerced women and others around him to fulfill his sexual desires, protect his reputation, and conceal his conduct. Diddy has denied all the allegations, but will have to defend himself in federal court when prosecutors try the case and try to lock up Diddy for decades. Unreal. When you think about it, when I think about it, you go back in time. It seems like yesterday, but it was a while ago when he burst onto the scene. And then you saw the rise to fame and fortune and really becoming a mogul in the entertainment business. You talk about a fall from grace. I want you to take a listen. This is the U.S. Attorney Damian Williams, whose office is handling the case against Diddy and investigated the case against Diddy. And in particular, zeroing in on what seems to be an ongoing, I don't know if you would call it a party or something that was happening that would often result in this type of conduct. And it had a strange name. They call them freak-offs. Take a listen.
The indictment alleges that Combs abused and exploited women and other people for years, and in a variety of ways. As alleged, Combs used force, threats of force, and coercion to cause victims to engage in extended sexual performances with male commercial sex workers, some of whom he transported or caused to be transported over state lines. Combs allegedly planned and controlled the sex performances, which he called freak-offs, and he often electronically recorded them. The freak-offs sometimes lasted days at a time, involved multiple commercial sex workers, and often involved a variety of narcotics, such as ketamine, ecstasy, and GHB, which Combs distributed to the victims to keep them obedient and compliant. As alleged, when Combs didn't get his way, he was violent, and he subjected victims to physical, emotional, and verbal abuse so that they would participate in the freak-offs, and that Combs hit, kicked, threw objects at, and dragged victims, at times by their hair. On one occasion in March of 2016, that conduct was captured on video and later reported in the media. Specifically, Combs kicked, dragged, and threw a vase at a victim in a Los Angeles hotel when the victim was attempting to flee. As alleged, these assaults often resulted in injuries to the victims, which took days or weeks to heal. In addition to the violence, the indictment alleges that Combs threatened and coerced victims to get them to participate in the freak-offs. He used the embarrassing and sensitive recordings he made of the freak-offs as collateral against the victims. He used his business and employees of that business and other close associates to get his way. Those individuals allegedly included high-ranking supervisors in the business, personal assistants, security staff, and household staff. The indictment alleges that those individuals facilitated the freak-offs. They booked the hotel rooms and stocked them with the supplies, including drugs, baby oil, personal lubricant, extra linens, and lighting. When the hotel rooms got damaged, they helped clean it up. They arranged for victims and commercial sex workers to travel for the freak-offs, and they delivered large quantities of cash to Combs to pay for the commercial sex workers.
This is some extreme behavior that's being alleged here. And it brings me to my first question, and it's about these freak-offs, which is, what exactly happened at Diddy's freak-offs? What's going on here? Do people know about this? Was this a secret? Let me bring in my guest going to help us through all of this. Joining me tonight, celebrity blogger and columnist Perez Hilton is with us, and editor-in-chief of Hip Hop Inquirer, Dennis Byron. Thank you both for being here. Perez, let me ask you about freak-offs. Is this the first time you're hearing of these? What is the story behind these?
A freak-off is another way to call an orgy. I hope that that's a family-friendly word without going into detail. Here's the issue. These rumors have been around for a very long time. In fact, some people have publicly spoken about them, but the legacy media, traditional outlets were afraid of covering it because it's highly litigious. If you were to say, Diddy's been engaging in this, we heard from a source, Diddy would sue you. And that's why he was able to get away with this, according to the feds, for decades. And also with the aiding and abiding, the accomplices being his staff who helped him run this criminal operation.
Dennis Byron, let me ask you, freak-offs. Was everyone using this term? Had you ever heard this term before? And what's your understanding of who's going to these things?
I know for a fact I'm not one of the people who participate in any freak-offs. Well, I've been covering Mr. Combs for well over 30 years, and I've been invited to parties as a member of the press. I have never personally witnessed this. I've heard chatter about this, but for the most part, most of his parties have been well attended by some of the biggest names in entertainment. So if something happened after 2 or 3 in the morning, I wasn't there. So, I've heard the term, but I've never participated in any freak-offs with Mr. Combs or anyone else. But again, these are some serious allegations.
Oh, absolutely. I want to remind folks, because we covered this story previously, the civil lawsuit by Cassie, and I want to read part of this, which sort of traces the origins of the freak-offs. The first time Mr. Combs, this is the allegations in the civil case, Mr. Combs hired a man and brought the man to his home in Los Angeles. The man, Mr. Combs, and Ms. Ventura wore masquerade masks and ingested drugs. Mr. Combs directed Ms. Ventura to perform sexual acts with this man while Mr. Combs watched them. He masturbated while he directed Ms. Ventura and the man to do specific sexual acts. The entire encounter lasted multiple days. Mr. Combs began to call the arrangement a freak-off or an FO. Ms. Ventura was eventually instructed to use websites and escort services to find male sex workers to participate. There's more here. I'm not going to read that part. Wow, it gets bad. They're talking about sex workers and then drugs. Perez, is my understanding of these freak-offs that it's more about Diddy and one partner he's with that he wants to see with other men? Or is this more of a group party? Like, is it a party, or is it like Diddy, Cassie, or someone else, and then they bring in these other folks and the staff is sort of helping produce the whole thing?
Well, I don't think the staff is there. Although, according to the indictment, the staff was aware. They were helping to plan. They would, coordinate airfare, sometimes traveling people in by plane. What this was, and even as recently as this week when he was arrested, the authorities say that Diddy had drugs in his hotel room. This is an addict who was functioning as an addict, who would throw drug-fueled parties, and according to the indictment against him, would often videotape what was happening at the party to use those recordings against the participants. He's been accused of kidnapping. He's been accused of even arson, the most mind-blowing things, which Cassie previously alluded to. His ex-girlfriend, Cassie, said that there was a period of time back in the early 2010s where she dated Kid Cudi, and Diddy did not like that. He was very possessive and jealous and threatened Kid Cudi, and then Kid Cudi's car caught on fire. This is a dangerous man who wanted to be out on bail, and thankfully the judge denied that, although there will be a bail appeal.
Right. Dennis, when you first started getting wind of all these allegations becoming very public, did it shock you? Did it surprise you after covering this man for so many years professionally?
What shocked me was the video of Cassie Ventura, and seeing it in real time, because Diddy has a public persona that it hadn't been tarnished up until that video. While we've heard a lot of rumors, the video that we see, we heard a lot of rumors about, he's not the guy to mess with. We know he's very powerful. We know that he can make or break a career. But that video really shocked me. I think that was the moment I had to take a step back and question whether or not these other claims there's truth to some of these other claims.
All right, Perez Hilton, Dennis Byron staying with us. Coming up next, why did it take so long for Diddy to be charged?
The indictment alleges that between at least 2008 and the present, Combs abused, threatened, and coerced victims to fulfill his sexual desires, protect his reputation, and conceal his conduct.
Now, back to the Court TV podcast.
This office is determined to investigate and prosecute anyone who engages in sex trafficking, no matter how powerful or wealthy or famous you may be. No one should doubt our commitment on that. A year ago, Sean Combs stood in Times Square and was handed a key to New York City. Today, he's been indicted and will face justice in the Southern District of New York.
That's the U.S. Attorney, and they don't come more famous than P. Diddy, Puff Daddy, Sean Combs. I mean, this guy's been a star for decades now. For decades. Not just a star, rich, powerful, everything that comes along with it. But here's the U.S. Attorney on the day announcing the indictment and describing these allegations.
Today, I'm announcing the unsealing of a 3-count indictment, charging Sean Combs with racketeering conspiracy, sex trafficking, interstate transportation for prostitution. The indictment alleges that between at least 2008 and the present, Combs abused, threatened, and coerced victims to fulfill his sexual desires, protect his reputation, and conceal his conduct.
2008. They're saying the conduct goes back to at least 2008, which brings me to my next question, which is, why did it take so long for Diddy to be charged? Still with us, celebrity blogger and columnist Perez Hilton and editor-in-chief of Hip Hop Inquirer Dennis Byron. Perez, from your perspective, why did it take so long here for him to finally be charged for something?
I think because people were afraid to speak out. It took really Cassie going public with her lawsuit against him and laying it all out there in that court document, all of the things she alleged happened, and that lawsuit was taken care of within hours by Diddy. They reached a settlement. But after she sued him and said, this is my truth, this is what happened, that kind of opened the doors. And I'm thinking that around the same time is when this federal investigation began, if not prior. And I'm thankful that the authorities took their time to get an overabundance of evidence. It's going to be very hard for him. I mean, they've already have in possession videos. They have illegally possessed firearms. They possessed drugs, narcotics from him. We got a preview in court as to what we can expect when the trial happens. His attorney actually told the judge repeatedly that Diddy is innocent and that all is not as it seems, referencing that now infamous video with Cassie where he's dragging her through the hotel. The lawyer claimed in court that Diddy was also a victim of domestic abuse, that Cassie was violent to him. And he reiterated that all of these relations that Diddy engaged in were consensual. I'm sure in a trial we will hear differently from the parties involved.
Absolutely. Absolutely, but the lines have been drawn. I want to go through a little bit of a timeline here just to outline some of the allegations and lawsuits through the years. November 16th, 2023, former longtime girlfriend Cassie Ventura filed a civil suit against Combs, is what Perez just referenced, alleging physical, sexual, emotional abuse over a decade. November 23rd, Joy Dickerson Neal filed suit against Combs, accusing him of drugging and raping her in January of 1991. When she was a college student at Syracuse. Lisa Gardner filed a lawsuit against Combs, claiming that he and a singer-songwriter both took turns raping her and a friend one night in the early 90s. December 6th, 2023, Combs, a business associate and a third defendant, are named in a complaint by a woman identified only as Jane Doe, who alleged that in 2023, when she was 17, she was sex trafficked and gang raped by Combs, the associate and a third assailant. February 26, 2024, music producer Rodney Little Rod Jones sued Combs, accusing him in graphic detail of unwanted sexual contact and of forcing him to hire prostitutes and to participate in sex acts with them. May 2024, surveillance video released. We've been talking about it. 2016 altercation showing Diddy assaulting Cassie Ventura. May 24, former model named Christy McKinney accused Combs of sexually assaulting her in 2003 at his recording studio in New York when she was just 22. May 23rd, a woman named April Lampros filed a lawsuit accusing Combs of drugging and sexually assaulting him after she met him more than 20 years ago. June 10th, a Michigan inmate claims Combs drugged and sexually assaulted him at a party in Detroit in 1997. July 3rd, former adult film actress files a suit claiming sex trafficking and naming a woman accused of being to Combs what Ghislaine Maxwell was to Jeffrey Epstein. Former bandmate in September, Dawn Richard, accused him of terrorizing and sexually abusing her in a lawsuit. September 2024, arrested and indicted on these charges. Dennis Byron, it's a long history. I understand civil lawsuits, when you have deep pockets, people go after you. But from your perspective, why did it take so long for him to be criminally charged for something if all this is sort of percolating in the background?
Because you never had anyone that would actually come out and say that Puff did these things to them. It took Cassie, and I'm going to commend her for this, that she had the courage to come out and tell her story. And that motivated others to come out. And I can tell you, covering the R. Kelly trial in New York, I don't see a way for him to get out of this case. I do see there's a 99% chance he's going to get convicted if he doesn't take a plea deal. This is Southern District of New York.
Yeah, I'm with you.
They rarely lose cases.
It's the same case. It's the same case. The blueprint is there. You read the words. There's a lot of similarities. The actions here, though, the allegations are a little more extreme than R. Kelly, believe it or not. I want you to take a listen to the U.S. Attorney being asked that question. Why did it take so long?
The indictment describes aggressive, open, violent, hedonistic abuse that you say was recurrent and widely known. Why did it take law enforcement so long to intervene? How many women were victimized by Sean Combs, and how many others were involved?
Look, our investigation is ongoing. We are committed to bringing justice to everyone who's been victimized by the defendant. I can't tell you why it took so long. I think the better focus is on the fact that we are here today.
Okay, Perez, not really an answer there, but one thing he did say, it's ongoing. They're asking for more people if they have information, probably asking for more accusers to come forward if they exist. Perez, do you expect this thing to get bigger in terms of more accusers? And do you expect any celebrities, not naming names, but do you expect other celebrities, perhaps their names, to be a part of this, not on the end of being a victim, but on the end of kind of being with Diddy?
No, from all that I've read, it's not another literal Jeffrey Epstein situation. These freak-ons, the orgies that Diddy would put on were with most often sex workers and the women and sometimes men in his life. It wasn't, Jay-Z, and it wasn't Kanye and all these people having this massive free-for-all. It was all centered around Diddy, the sex workers, and the women or men that he had intimate relations with, is my understanding. And I've also heard enough from former prosecutors and other legal scholars that it's unlikely they are guesstimating that Diddy will accept a plea deal, because he is facing, if convicted on all charges, life in prison. So they're going to fight this, and it's going to be very costly for him. He is struggling somewhat financially. He is selling his private plane. He listed his Los Angeles mansion up for sale. So it's a difficult time for him.
Perez Hilton, Dennis Byron, really appreciate it. Thanks so much. I'm Vinnie Politan. We'll keep digging for answers as the investigation continues. I'm Vinnie Politan. We continue our investigation of Sean Diddy Combs. The writing seemed to be on the wall when Combs was sued civilly for alleged conduct that was clearly criminal in nature. Well, now the page is turned, and Diddy's problems are not money, but instead a potential of life behind bars. Here's the story.
His parties in Hollywood are legendary. His empire immense. His bank account huge. But now the world of Sean Puffy P. Diddy Combs has changed dramatically. Federal prosecutors want to send him from his mansions into a prison cell after indicting him on racketeering charges. They allege he was running a criminal organization where he abused, threatened, and coerced women and others around him to fulfill his sexual desires, protect his reputation, and conceal his conduct. Diddy is facing decades behind bars, but has denied all the allegations and conduct he's been accused of. So now it looks like a jury of 12 will have to decide where Diddy will reside for the rest of his life.
Everything is at stake here. I mean, everything. When you are backed up against the wall and you are facing an indictment where you can spend the rest of your life in prison, you're going to put everything that you can to fight these charges. And I think that's where Diddy is going to end up in all of this. But let's begin with what the U.S. Attorney is talking about here, the type of behavior, the allegations of the conduct on how Diddy was using his power and his control over his victims. Take a listen.
And the indictment alleges that he maintained control over the victims in several ways, including by giving them drugs, by giving and threatening to take away financial support or housing, by promising them career opportunities, by monitoring their whereabouts, and even by dictating their physical appearance. Because of all of this, the indictment alleges that the victims did not believe they could refuse Combs without risking their security or facing more abuse. The indictment also alleges other acts of violence undertaken by Combs and others, including violence against witnesses to his abuse, kidnapping, and arson. The indictment alleges that on more than one occasion, Combs carried or brandished firearms to intimidate and threaten victims and witnesses.
The last time I was covering a Diddy trial, right around the turn of the century, it involved a weapon. He was found not guilty in New York, but that was sort of, everyone thought that was a big deal. That's nothing compared to the allegations here, which brings me to my next question, which is the violence. How dangerous is Diddy? You heard the U.S. Attorney. He's talking about violence. He's talking about weapons. Joining me tonight, multimedia personality and host of the national radio show Dish Nation, Headcrack is with us, and entertainment reporter for the Associated Press, Andrew Dalton. Great to see you both. Thanks for being here. Headcrack, let me ask you, how dangerous is Diddy?
Depends who you believe. I think Kid Cudi would probably tell you a very crazy story because, you know, rumor has it that Diddy or somebody that knows Diddy might have something to do with Kid Cudi's car blowing up at one point in time. If you go back to even the early 90s when he threw this, you know, big basketball tournament but didn't have enough security to hold everything together and people got killed, that was dangerous, but it was dangerous in a different way. It was somebody being reckless and, you know, chasing the money and not necessarily making sure everybody's safety was at bay. And then, you know, you go back to the shootout with Shine and J-Lo, you know, way back in, you know, the late 90s, early 2000s. You know, a woman got shot in the face over that. And that same woman, I believe, was very adamant that it was Diddy who shot the gun that night. So if you listen to the victims, sounds like he's very dangerous. Disappointing as a hip-hop fan.
Yeah. Andrew Dalton, you know, we look at what's this happening here with these allegations, and I think the surprising part for me is the violence part of it, right? Because I heard the other rumors about the masks, the freak-offs and everything else, but the intimidation and the violence involved here kind of took me back for a moment. From your perspective, covering this, studying this, how dangerous is Diddy?
You know, most of the stories we've heard do go back, you know, as both of you were talking about, many years. And he's cultivated this very different image of this kind of global jet-setting, you know, party-throwing businessman, also of this sort of doting, loving father to a lot of kids. And that kind of part of his past has been buried in the background. And, you know, a lot of it has recently come back up. I mean, you know, most of the allegations of violence are a little bit vague and more in the past, although when it comes to the direct intimidation of witnesses, there were a lot more specific allegations aired more recently. One of the reasons that he's being held in jail is specifically because of a worry of that. You know, when Cassie filed her lawsuit way back in November, prosecutors say it was almost immediately that he was, you know, reaching out to intimidate other victims, usually with just with threats, but the violence would loom.
Now, in Cassie's lawsuit against Diddy, she alleged that he physically abused her in a hotel hallway. The surveillance video of that incident was obtained exclusively by CNN. Here is that video. And, you know, Headcrack, as we watch this video, this was like a big moment public. When this became public, I think all of a sudden it's so much more real for everyone to be able to now think that Diddy could be this violent and could be this dangerous.
Absolutely. I mean, here's the thing. If liars will lie until their lie is proven to be a lie. And, you know, before that video came out, he was very adamant that, hey, man, I ain't do no wrongdoing. Then the video came out, I was like, yo, my bad, I'm a different person. So, you know, seeing that video in high resolution 4K definitely paints a narrative and it gets a conversation going and a story started that a lot of people have been whispering for a long time, but now they're saying it louder. And, you know, and I think we're just beginning to get to the tip of the iceberg.
I want to take a listen to the U.S. Attorney, Damian Williams. And in this part, he's talking about the weapons that were seized.
As you can see here, this is a drum magazine, large capacity, and it contains, I believe, 59 rounds. I mentioned as well, we recovered 3 AR-15s. This is a close-up shot of one of the AR-15s, and you can see right here, the serial number has been thoroughly defaced. Another picture of more ammunition and parts of 2 AR-15s right there.
Andrew Dalton, how do you see the significance of that aspect of what's being alleged here, the weapons that are seized, and what picture that paints or doesn't paint of Diddy and his world?
Yeah, the U.S. attorney definitely intends to, use that imagery in a big way. The charges as they've been revealed here don't get into the guns a whole lot. I mean, they are very vague at this point anyway. I mean, the descriptions in an indictment, especially a RICO indictment like this, tend to describe conspiracy in very broad terms more than specific acts. But in some ways, the guns, a couple of which were found in his closet in Miami during the raid, they provide kind of a really useful visual that the prosecutors can pull up.
Now, Headcrack, in covering all of this just recently, as we stay on top of all the court cases here at Court TV, in Keffe D's case, where he's been accused in the murder of Tupac, in his court papers, he's implicating Diddy into all of this. And throw that into the mix here, and you talk about danger. Now, I take everything with a grain of salt when a criminal defendant accused in a murder case makes an allegation, but I'm looking at it a little differently today just because of everything else that has come out about Diddy. What are your thoughts about really the level of him being literally dangerous versus trying to portray himself as someone who's kind of dangerous and you got to look out and you better listen to him?
Well, I think the wild part is, as far as the public persona goes, he never really portrayed himself as a dangerous person. You think about some of the things he did in the vote or die space back in the days. And, and even some of the charitable things that he may have done, in the past as well. He never really touted himself to be this gangster. He's more like a businessman who, finds hot artists and puts them on. So we never really looked at him through those lightened lenses. But people in the business, people who are like adjacent to certain scenarios, people who really been paying close attention with a fine-tooth comb, you start to piece things together and things start making sense. So like even what you were saying about the Keffe D thing, it's almost like you're building a puzzle and then you're missing a bunch of pieces. So you don't know what the picture's, supposed to be in the puzzle. But then when you get the right, it's like, oh, this is all connected. This is connected to that. And, and I think when it's all said and done, I think there's going to be a lot more people who's going to be named between point A and point B. You're going to realize that maybe there was some more things that maybe he had his hands on than we thought about. And, once again, I can't stress enough, it's scary and disappointing. And going back to the AR-15 thing that you mentioned, I think, with that scenario, they're just adding things because apparently it's okay to have AR-15s. Whenever a school gets shot up, the NRA is quick to be like, oh, AR-15s, they're fine. Everyone can have them. But in this scenario, it's like, oh, he had AR-15s. It's the worst thing in the world. These guns shouldn't be on the street. Nobody should be able to have access to this type of weaponry.
Yeah, when it comes to the weapons, it'll be, I think, a situation of, are they legally obtained, illegally obtained? Have they scratched off serial numbers? And I think that becomes the crucial part of it. And I think you're right there, because if you're, down in Florida, yeah, you can purchase a weapon. Absolutely. Andrew, let me ask you about the repercussions of all of this, because this is a guy who is rubbing elbows with everybody. I mean, everybody. The top A-list, top flight celebrities for years he's been palling around with. What impact, if any, does that have on what is happening now with Diddy?
Yeah, he's someone whose brand is very much himself. I mean, there are other people, R. Kelly, the films of Woody Allen are produced by Harvey Weinstein, where you can say, well, I'm going to partake of the work and I consider that separate from the personality. But in the case of Diddy, his personality and his work are kind of indistinguishable. I mean, it's certainly possible to listen to some of the music he's put out or produced, but he's so much at the center of that this stuff can be sort of especially damning, as his public image, whatever it may be, is kind of everything for him. The significance of that Cassie beating video really can't be overstated. A lot of allies that he seemed to have and those prominent people that you were talking about really abandoned him en masse in those just few days after that video was released. So he had to return a key that he'd given by the mayor of New York City, universities,
big moment.
Things like that.
Big moment. Okay, head crack. Andrew Dalton staying with us. The U.S. Attorney basically says there's incriminating videos recorded by Diddy. So still to come, why did Diddy record any of this?
Combs allegedly planned and controlled the sex performances, which he called freak-offs, and he often electronically recorded them.
Now, back to the Court TV podcast.
I know everybody got these jokes about Diddy right now, but me personally, if I was him, I'd be sick right now.
She done got the money, and she still want to take him down even more. He said that money ain't enough. She want him in jail for the rest of his life.
But now that I think about it, though, he must have did Shorty some crazy because out of everybody that got these allegations and saying that he did X, Y, and Z, only one of them got that bag. The happened at that Diddy party?
And child, if you look down here, they confiscated his electronics, so we will be getting more tea soon.
After doing stuff to people for the last 25 years of his life, man, he should have known he gonna get caught. Eventually, every dog got their day, man. I ain't gonna lie. Eventually, I do see him going to jail.
This just goes to show you, no matter how rich someone is, no matter how successful someone is, there's always skeletons in the closet. Always. Y'all stay safe out there.
The public reaction to the initial raids on Diddy's property, and now Diddy's been indicted, facing life in prison. Now, a lot of the allegations are focusing around these freak-offs. I want you to take a listen to the U.S. Attorney Damian Williams explaining the significance of them and how they make their way into this indictment.
Combs allegedly planned and controlled the sex performances, which he called freak-offs, and he often electronically recorded them. The freak-offs sometimes lasted days at a time. He used the embarrassing and sensitive recordings he made of the freak-offs as collateral against the victims.
He recorded them. He's recording this stuff, and now those recordings are going to be used against him, which brings me to my next question. Why did Diddy record any of this? Is it personal pleasure? Is it the collateral, blackmail? What's going on here? Still with us tonight, multimedia personality, host of the national radio show Dish Nation, head crack, and entertainment reporter for the Associated Press, Andrew Dalton. Andrew, is this about blackmailing the victims and keeping control of them because you've got the video?
That certainly seems to be the case when it comes to the freak-offs. I mean, part of it, is clearly a description that just sounds like he liked sort of playing the role of porn director, and that he would, film it for the same reasons he would that. But it clearly had the dual purpose, at least according to prosecutors, of becoming leverage, becoming collateral against everyone who appeared on the tapes. And all indications are across all the lawsuits that he was a chronic recorder of everything around him. The Lil Rod lawsuit describes Rodney Jones, being hired to produce an album, being told, keep the tape running all the time. Whether or not anyone's making any music, when you're with me, the tape should be running. And, apparently captured a lot of things that would probably be very useful to prosecutors right now. So it was clear this is a chronic habit that might go beyond individual reasons, but having that kind of leverage and having that kind of collateral is definitely part of it.
I want to put up on the screen, this is from Cassie's lawsuit. During the FOs, the freak-offs, in addition to directing Ms. Ventura and masturbating, Mr. Combs would use his phone, laptop, and tablet to film Ms. Ventura having sex with the hired sex worker. He treated the forced encounter as a personal art project, adjusting the candles he used for lighting to frame the videos he took. Head crack, what's really going on here with this? These videos are seemingly produced, are lit, art for him. What do you suspect is the motivation behind all these videos?
I mean, for one, I think money magnifies the monster. So whatever you're into, if you have the money to do all of that and then more, you're going to do all of that. And I think, to lend to what my man was saying, some of it is for leverage. Some of it is for his personal kinks. And, and the crazy thing is, like, this type of stuff isn't new. Diddy didn't invent this. This has been something that has been going on in the entertainment business for a long time. Maybe not at the magnitude in which we're talking about right here, but, you used to hear about all these crazy Hollywood parties back in the day, when the studios were just getting started and people would record all types of activities with whatever technology they had at the time to have leverage over people and hold dominion over them. But I think, this exceeds that and gets into like a fetish arena, especially when you're offering up somebody who you're in a relationship with to paid sex performers. That, my man needs a cell and a psychiatrist.
Yeah. Headcrack, let me ask you, do you suspect that anyone from Hollywood, from entertainment, from hip hop will be supporting Diddy? I cover trials all the time. There's always people supporting the accused. Sometimes it's just family members. Sometimes it's someone you might not expect. What do you expect to happen here?
I think only the squeakiest of wheels are going to get behind him at this point in time because, entertainment is about self-preservation, and we've seen it a lot of times. Whenever somebody's in the fire and the stove is hot, everybody start backing up and getting away from around these people. I mean, like, look at all these people that we're showing in this montage right here. Like, nobody has jumped out and said, I don't think he would do that. That doesn't sound like anything he would do. Everyone is just remaining silent. And is it silent because they know that there's truth to it? Or are they silent because maybe they might be implicated in some of this once we start learning who and what is exactly on some of these tapes that they confiscated? It is scary and largely disappointing because, it
is for a lot of people.
You see somebody get it, yeah.
It really is for a lot of people. Andrew, the U.S. Attorney, it's a continuing investigation. It seemingly always is, wanting to get more information. Do you think this is the end, or do you think there's going to be more in terms of victims or more in terms of potential defendants?
There was the marked absence of the names of other defendants, and that's common, in a federal indictment like this. Early on, you had a lot of unnamed people, but there was really no one else named. But it is a really valuable tool to as you know, Vinnie, to flip people. So, there might be, as we speak or in the near future going on, attempts to certainly get people around him, anyone who was involved, to testify against him, who they put sort of at the pinnacle of this enterprise. So that will definitely be an effort. Whether there will be a whole lot more victims who have come forward, I mean, there is a moment possibly that they might see of safety here. Even beyond the sort of precedent set with the lawsuits where he's in jail and he's being kept there. And there might be more people who feel the need, who haven't been contacted already, to come forward.
Big thank you. Headcrack Andrew Dalton, appreciate your insight and your valuable time. We'll talk again. The allegations here are shocking, to say the least. It's hard to imagine that anyone would engage in behavior like this, especially someone who built an empire and was living a life where he could literally have, like, anything. But perhaps that just wasn't enough. Now, the truth will hopefully come out in a courtroom, and if all of this is true, the only punishment that would be appropriate would be to keep him locked away from civilized society. We'll wait for the jury to let us know. I'm Vinnie Politan. We'll keep digging for answers as the investigation continues. There you have it. If you want to see more in-depth reporting on the latest true crime stories, you can see me every weeknight, 8 p.m. Eastern on Closing Arguments. Thank you so much for downloading. And as always, please don't forget to hug the kids.
This podcast is a production of Court TV. Go to CourtTV.com for more content, trials on demand, and to find out how to watch Court TV in your area.